It's working. Hey guys, welcome back. It is the Dr. Cloud Show, and this is someday during the week, Tuesday, I think. And I want to welcome all of you to joining in with me as we fight the war against dysfunction, one dynamic at a time. And that involves you because we're developing herd immunity, right? As you change stuff in your head, the outside world actually, becomes more negotiable. In fact, we're going to talk about that in the thought for today. But I want to remind you how this works, and it works through your participation. So if you want to call in, the number is 844-940-2774, 844-940-2774. Now, that really ought to be on your speed dial, because when you're in that moment with that really dysfunctional person, you ought to just hit speed dial and bring them on here. We'll fix them. But today, you can just call 844-940-2774 is the number to get on the air. And if you don't want to be on the air, but you want to ask your question, you can do that on any of the social platforms, Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, where we ought to all be live and together right now. You just post your question, and Jessica will be looking at those and serve some up for us. So that's the way that works. All righty. How about this, guys? This is episode number 322. We started this in lockdown, and some of you, wherever you live, are more locked down than others, but we're still kind of climbing out of that hole. But how about that? We've been together 322 days. That's kind of cool. All right, quick announcement. February 21st, that's next week. We are doing the big webinar, 2 hours live right here, you and me, on the dynamics of trust. How do you build trust? How does it get broken? When it does get broken, can you repair it in any significant relationship? Is trust ever really repairable? Is it possible for when trust is broken that the future trust is better than what existed before? Are there people that break your trust that you should never trust again? And how do you know when to trust again and when not to trust again? We're going to go through all of that next week. But you got to sign up. And if you can't be there, February 21st at 5 p.m. Pacific time, if you can't be there live with us, no biggie. You just register for the live event, and then you can stream it afterwards as many times as you want. Invite your small group over, invite your wacky cousins over, invite your in-laws over, and say, see, I told you so. Or whoever you want to get to join with you. We'll do that together. And while you're there, how do you get it? You go to this website, boundaries.me/trust, boundaries.me/trust. And while you're there, make sure you check out the whole boundaries.me world of stuff. We have almost 100 courses on there now, and you can peruse those just like some big platform like Netflix or something. All righty. Okay, let's hop into the thought for the day while calls are coming in. 844-940-2774. I can't tell if we have any. Abby? Never mind. I'm sure we have a line open somewhere. 844-940-2774. 844-940-2774. Or post your question on social. Okay, thought for the day. We have entitled this. Actually, it's the title of one of my textbooks by one of the most important influences in my life, a psychiatrist named Otto Kernberg, who was one of the earliest ones to help us really understand narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. We get calls about that every now and then. And he was, in my view, one of the real rocket scientists about this. And he developed a bunch of treatment for those folks who suffer from that and the people that love them who also suffer. And he wrote a book called Internal World and External Reality. Now, this isn't a compilation book, but that's the title. But I wanted to have you think about something today. Okay, you have relationships, right? Here's you, and here's the other person. Now, we think we are interacting with another person, right? This is you, this is me. That's what we think. That's actually not what's happening. What's happening is you are in a relationship from a complicated neurological, biological, psychological epistemological, every other logical, complicated formula. You are an image of yourself in relationship, not with the other person in reality, but your internal image of that person. That's who the relationship is truly between. For example, do you ever talk to somebody and you try to point out a mistake they made or something, and they blow up on you if they're really narcissistic or perfectionistic or image conscious or whatever? They get defensive and blow up on you. Why does that happen if you pointed out something in reality that you saw that person did? Well, it's because that whatever feedback you gave them did not fit with their image of themselves. So they respond from their image of themselves, and now we're in a fight. Okay. Now, let's say your image of yourself is less than who you really are. Let's say your image of yourself is, you have a picture of yourself as maybe kind of powerless, or not having, you don't have the who wants to hear from me, or why does my opinion count, or I should do what they want kind of image of yourself. They come at you hard. This picture of yourself in yourself responds with all that you believe about yourself, which is, I don't really have to say so. And you go quiet and you adapt. And there is what we call a dysfunctional relationship. One person who is not the real person, who does have flaws, they think they're perfect, and you in a relationship with this weirdness of the other person, because your picture of yourself doesn't really have the tools that can respond to them. And then we're down the path, maybe for 40 years. So that's why part of personal growth is, and this is why, guys, you've heard me say this before, if you've ever heard me say it before, this whole crap about self-esteem is, some people, like, they're building their self-esteem so their picture of themselves is so wonderful that it doesn't include a lot of reality about what's not so wonderful. I mean, the people that you love the most are not the ones that come off as perfect and wonderful and above you and all this kind of stuff. They're people that also make you aware of their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses. And they confess things to you and say, I'm really struggling with this. That draws you closer. Well, of course it draws you closer, because now you're getting through the veil of the image into the real person who is being real. And so when people have this thing on self-esteem, it's all about how wonderful. Well, that's just a picture. I was talking with somebody about parenting, and how, some parents just can't see their kids as anything but perfect. And, like, the kid sets the classroom on fire because he's a little sociopath. And the school calls the parents, and the parents go, what are you talking about? He's just creative. No, he's not creative. He's got behavior problems. So that's why, let's take the self-esteem side and put it aside. And let's talk about what I think the research shows us and what the Bible talks about. And that is not self-esteem, but it is a self-image. Now, a self-image is exactly what I'm talking about. If you go to one of my favorite verses in Romans 12, it says, have a sober estimation of yourself, or a sober assessment, a realistic picture of yourself. Then you can get to better and better and better and better and better and better places. Because if we don't really see who we are, you're not going to see your real strengths, you're not going to see your real weaknesses. Your weaknesses will remain over here, compartmentalized, always ready to jump out and sabotage your life, but not included as something you carry about yourself. And so if you're a psychologist, for example, I mean, you think you won the lottery when a new person comes in that you're going to work with, and you say, how can I help you? And they go, well, I've seen some, I'm in a difficult marriage or difficult relationship, and I've seen some tendencies in myself to ... or I have a real problem with, or I've noticed I have this And you just think, oh gosh, will you be my client for 100 years? Please never leave. You're just so awesome. I want to work with you. Why? Because their image of themselves includes much more reality than the person who walks in, and their image of themselves is they're perfect and everybody else is bad. Well, that's when you're quickly going through your filing system saying, who can I refer them to? Because this is going to be awful. Well, just kidding. But it is how it feels in real relationships. So why do I say all this? I want you to do a little experiment. Let me give you an example. I remember this lady that I was working with one time, and she was she's talking about her husband and how controlling and 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 just scary and emotionally abusive and all. It's like this guy was like, I felt like this. She's married to Godzilla, and so finally I said, you know what? If this this is not good, and she was scared all the time and all this. And so I said, I want you to bring him in. She goes, no, 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 you don't understand. If you start to confront him, or it will get. And I said, well, I think I'll be able to handle it. It's okay. I can manage that. She goes, I don't know. He's just so, and she's painting this picture of, I don't know even how to describe. It's like, all the Navy SEALs and Army Rangers rolled into one body. It's kind of so frightening. I've got the police on speed dial or something. But anyway, she finally agrees, and she asks him in, and I'm kind of walking into the waiting room, sort of, what am I about to walk into? And I go in there and I look around because there's this one kind of mousy looking little, or acting a little, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, it didn't seem powerful. He's the only guy in the waiting room. And I said, are you? And he goes, oh, yes. And he says, hi, Dr. Cloud. It's so nice to meet you. And I don't mean to sound bad, but he wasn't like Godzilla. He was very like kind of passive and not that, but in her head, just because he did kind of, he could, be direct or say things or whatever. In her head, she was so scared of this other because her picture of the other was coming from her head of some very powerful others that truly had been controlling, awful, abusive, gaslighting, that she had built this picture of, well, that's what other people that I love or want to be loved by are like. And so now that's who she related to with him. And she was scared all the time. And the work together was twofold. It was getting him to intentionally help her see his weaknesses or his vulnerabilities, or actually his need for her. And I was trying to pull those out more. He was a little resistant to ever expressing those kind of vulnerabilities. He was better at, just saying stronger stuff. She started changing her picture of him. Her fear goes down. And he starts to actually invite her through our work together, invite her to bring in other parts of her that didn't exist in her picture of herself, which was somebody that has strengths as well as weaknesses. So she showed up with those strengths, and he showed up with more vulnerability. And after, a little work like that, they started to realize something that I want you to realize, and here's your experiment as you take this forward today, is I taught them to kind of check out what was going on in their head about the other instead of assuming it and acting on it. And what does that mean? She would think, so, well, I mean, he's going to be really mad if I say this or whatever. And so, because he's going to be really mad, then I'm not going to say it. Well, that's behaving in relation to the image you have of him, not the real him. So they learn for her to say, for example, I really want to disagree with what you're doing about this decision or whatever, but I'm kind of scared. And then he could see that and he could say, well, I really want to hear that. You don't have to be scared. It's just kind of what they're developing. This is one of my favorite words in the universe is curiosity. Because curiosity doesn't assume. See, one of my favorite verses, I was reading it last night in the book of James. God is opposed to the proud, but draws close near to the humble. And a big part of humility that makes relationships survive and do well is, we think of humble as just kind of serving and all that. Humble, especially in the Bible's view and also in the psychological research literature view, humble is really not putting yourself down on some sort of putting I'm an idiot. That's not what humble is. I used to like to define humble with clients as honest. I mean, who can't be anything but humbled when you're honest about yourself? Because you're trying to be grandiose and perfect and wonderful, and you're really not. And you start to really be honest about how you're scared and sometimes don't know the answer and this, that, and the other. It's really hard to be arrogant when you're being honest about your vulnerabilities, about your weaknesses. Well, part of humility also is giving up, and let's, psychologists call this grandiosity. The Bible would call it pride, or we know it theologically as original sin. And original sin was the wish to be God. Omnipotence, narcissism, grandiosity, egocentricity, the world revolves around you. That's all, all the psychologists just talk about same thing the Bible talks about, that we want to be God. So we want to be like Satan said, sit in the chair of the Most High. You can be like him. That was the temptation. And so a lot of people think about that just controlling narcissistic people. No, codependents are original sinners. What is original sin? The wish to be God. So God is omniscient. We are omniscient. We know things. We're not know things. We don't know all things. Watch this. God is omnipotent. He's all powerful. We're potent. We're limited power. So in his power, he can control everything. So all the codependents that think they're so nice around all these bad people, guess what? Original sin got in your DNA too, because you think you can actually control another person by being nice. People pleasing. Well, that's an attempt of omnipotence. You can't control another person. But sometimes there's a passive way of doing that as well. So humility, partly in this relational thing, is giving up omniscience, meaning I don't really know who you are. I have an assumption in my head, or a fear maybe, or a picture or a transference from other relationships, or a view of you based on what I've heard or limited information. But back to what I was pointing to a moment ago, if I'm curious, I don't relate to you from what I'm assuming you're thinking or feeling. I relate to you with curiosity. So now what have I done? Now I've entered into, tell me more about that. Wow, that sounds like you must be feeling, well, tell me. Now, do you know how many marriages would change if every conversation was curiosity, which is a listening fuel, which draws more out of a person? As you draw more out of a person, you're getting a bigger picture of who they really are. And that gives you a much bigger toolkit with which to operate with them. And I see couples going around the same little rat trail that they were in. And you've seen couples. As soon as he says this or she says this, you know where this is going for the next 15 minutes. So if you're a good marriage counselor and you see one of those about to happen, you go, wait, stop. Let me ask you a question. If you say that, what do you think she's going to do? Well, I know what she's going to do. She's going to get mad, not talk to me for 3 days. So why would you say it? If that's what, are you crazy? Let's get curious about yourself and why you would say that. Let's get curious about what she might be feeling if you were saying that. Once you get into a curiosity conversation, you have something the Bible calls knowing. You know what the synonym in the Bible for knowing is? It's sex. There you're going, how did you get from talking to sex? Well, actually, another word for intercourse is a conversation. Because that's what the Bible says, that the greatest intimacy, a full knowing of somebody is not just physical. It's through intercourse, social intercourse, talking and understanding each other. We are learning who they really are instead of what my head thinks they are. And a lot of our relationships, a teenager comes down the stairs and starts to reach for a glass, and the parent goes, there you go again. I told you can't have Cokes for breakfast. Get some wine. And she goes, Mom, I was going to get some water. No, you always, well, okay, fine. You always see me this way. And then they rush up. See, they were operating on their images of each other instead of getting to know each other. So knowing equals intimacy. And I love the definition of intimacy that says, into me, see. Into the real me, open your eyes, get curious. And let's get curious about your own picture of yourself, because it's not accurate. None of ours is fully accurate. And let's let our internal world actually interface with true external reality. And that's how we get better. Okay, let's hop into some questions. 844-940-2774 is the number Catherine, you get caller of the day. Catherine, who listens on Facebook, listen, see, this is the kind of, she goes, am I an unsafe person? If so, what can I do about it? I read your email today and I identify with being a critic. Catherine, welcome to the program. You win. Like, you see that maybe you've got something you need to change.
Can you hear me, Dr. Cloud?
I can hear you so well. I want to invite you over for lunch. I love you already.
Oh my God. I have been, I can't believe I'm on the phone with you, but I had to call you after I read that email today. Dr. Cloud, help a sister out, okay?
Hey, you know what?
I need to find out what.
I've needed a co-host on this show for a long time, and you may be the one. How can I help you, Catherine? What's happening?
Okay, so here's what's going on. I read your email about unsafe people. Lordy, Miss Cloud. And I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, but it didn't take long. I said, I see a little myself in all of these people. Let me call Dr. Cloud today and find out what is up with me. I'm asking, I need to talk to you and find out if I'm unsafe. We always pointing at the other person, but I need to find out.
I don't know how unsafe you are. I don't know what the things you identify with, but the very fact, and I want everybody to hear this, the very fact that you can say, I might have some parts of me that aren't that safe, that makes you a safer person than before you identified them and spoke them. So you're already climbing the ladder. Now give me what's the big one that you got scared about?
Let's see. Geez, on a scale of 1 to 10, I was scared on all of them. Let me just pick one. Okay, so abandoners.
Abandoners.
Yes. I recognize that I have abandoned some relationships in the past, and we always want to kind of see ourselves as the golden angel, but some of those relationships I felt like I needed to abandon because they were unsafe people, gaslighting, people in my family.
Hold on, let's make sure we're talking about the right thing here, okay? That's not abandonment. That's a choice you make, okay? God doesn't abandon anybody, right? God's not an abandonment.
Right.
But what he says is, if you're gonna play with me, these are the rules of the house. Like we invite anybody in our house. You don't let anybody in your house if they're going to come catch the place on fire. I mean, I'd love to have you come play with me if there's some way. And if they say, "Well, I don't want to play that way," and you say, "No, I can't have a relationship with you," that's not abandonment. Abandonment is in a relationship where somebody's being, honestly vulnerable. They need you, and there's something you can provide for them or whatever, and you just say, "Heck with you, I don't like you" for no reason. So, did you do that?
No, I didn't do that. I think I came close though in a relationship with a friend of mine. I'm a Christian. She's a Christian. We have been friends for a long time. And I was feeling drained in the relationship because every time she needed me, I listened, asked questions, was empathetic, tried to be there. Well, I was there for her. But when I needed her throughout the relationship, when I wanted to talk about what was going on with me, I just got sidelined and she just wasn't there. So there was no reciprocity.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, I lost you there for a minute. You said that you had a friend. You had a friend that you felt like you abandoned. Tell me about that. And we got kind of fast because we're up against the clock.
Okay. So I felt like I abandoned her. And it may not be abandoned, but I left the relationship for a while after I spoke with her and said, "Listen, I got to take a break because I feel like this is all give to you and no reciprocity. And if this is a friendship that's mutual, why aren't you here when I need to talk with you, share with you what's going on with me? You just don't seem to be there." And she wasn't really honest with me initially, but then she finally told me after we kept having this conversation that she was taking antidepressants and she was very depressed and she would show up, disappear, and it was just draining.
Yeah. Okay. So she got honest. Okay.
And I had to stop and give myself some time because this went on for years, Dr. Cloud, and it was draining. And I felt like at some point I felt a little guilty that I was abandoning her because she needed me. So I'll tell you what I did. I told her to get some professional help, to get some therapy because I'm not a therapist.
How about that?
But a part of me misses her and feels like I did step away.
Okay, so let me give you some thoughts here.
Okay.
This is a little bit of a kind of a hybrid between what I was talking about before, that you choose to get out of some relationships because there are real reasons that the relationship is not working. Now, I want you to listen to this. The relationship is not working in the context of the kind of relationship that it is. Did you hear that sentence? The kind of relationship that it is. Now, you said this was supposed to be a friendship, which in friendship, we usually have some sort of interdependency, and we give and we take and we help and we receive and we build something together over time, right? Well, what you were noticing was that's not what happened. What you really had with him, even though you were friends, I understand that, but what you really had was a relationship, and the Bible talks about all these different kinds of relationships, but you had a relationship where you were there in a role of compassion, okay? You were there in a role of giver. You were there in a role of sacrificing for her. And that is a very valid kind of relationship. The problem was the way you structured the relationship and the purpose of the relationship didn't match what you're actually doing in the relationship. So, for example, like I tell people this, they'll call it dating calls, and they're dating somebody, and really the person, they're basically serving as a rehab center for someone. And I go, look, and they don't feel bad. They don't really want to date them anymore because the person can't be in a mutual relationship. And I go, look, it's okay to have ministry relationships in your life, people we give to who can never give us anything back. We should have And if you're looking at the
Okay.
wheel of your life, you should have some kind of chunk that is just service. But
Mm-hmm.
you had defined this as a different kind. So I think what you could do, if you want, you could go back to her, and I'm going to have to jump after this. And I'm also going to
Okay.
give you a license to oliveboundaries.me, which has many, many courses, and a lot of them will apply to this. But here's the thing. You can consider, let me give you one of my favorite verses, 2 Corinthians 9:7. It says, give as you have purposed in your heart, not begrudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. In other words, you shouldn't be giving time and effort to her that you're going to resent. That's kind of begrudgingly. Okay, I'll give it, but I don't really want to. Or compulsion is inside of our head. Under compulsion, feel like I should, or I'm a bad person, or I'm selfish if I don't. You should decide in my giving bucket, how much of my giving bucket do I want to give to her? How much of my volunteer time do I want to give to her? Because that's kind of what you're saying, that she needs support. And you can be there for her. Just define it right and give the appropriate amount of time and energy to it, and you can love her. There's 4 different kinds of love in the Greek language. There's agape, which is, there's philios, that's kind of the, what you were describing here, the friendship thing. And there's eros, that's the romantic, sexualized, fun stuff. And then the 4th one is a word called storge, and storge is where we're actually taking care of someone. This is a valid relationship, properly defined, but you're not going to get a lot of needs met there other than your needs to give, which we all have as well. And you should have something like that. You just have to define whether or not she is one. Okay, Catherine, I got to run. You are caller of the day.
Thank you.
Say that. I shouldn't award that trophy to the first caller, but I got to do it. Maybe we'll have many, many callers. Call me back sometime.
I will. Thank you, Dr. Cloud.
Okay, bye-bye. Oh, I love it when people say I have an issue, because when you got an issue, you got something to work on. I was in a consult the other day with somebody. I go, he's blaming everybody else in the world, and it's just me and him in the room. And I go, dude, I can't find the problem in the room anywhere. I'm a psychologist. I help people with problems. I can't find one. Everything, where's the problem? Because you don't have any. You keep telling me it's all out there. It's everybody else. Let's see if we can find a problem here in the room that I can fix. Rather hear somebody say, I have an issue. That's good. All righty, Jess, what are we hearing over on social land?
All right, so here we go. How do I get over this guy I was in love with? We agreed to go separate ways because we want different things. It's been 2 weeks. I can't stop thinking about him, and it makes me sick thinking about him with another woman.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing at your pain. Did she say any more? Are there any more?
I think she's just in a place of hurt, wanted to be heard, and wanted an answer to this. Yeah.
Okay, look, here's what I was kind of smiling at. Not your pain. A breakup is painful, especially when you really were into somebody like you were. I'm going to compliment you on one thing, that you recognize that at some level, what was going on in the heart and the love and all that, which was real and that you shared, which gets deep in here, that did not fit the whole picture of where you were going in life. In my book, How to Get a Day Worth Keeping, I talk about there are certain decisions in life that are like the Bible says, one of my favorite passages says, don't be unequally yoked. A yoke was when 2 oxen would get this thing put over their heads, 2 oxen, yeah, and they got to plow the field together. Well, they're going where the other one goes because they're tied together. All right, so there's in a relationship like you, a dating relationship, there are a handful of things that, in my experience, tend to be direction setters in life. And if you guys aren't going in the same direction on things like, well, first of all, your values, right? Or your faith. But what about one of you wants to have kids and the other one can't stand the idea of having kids? You might have a lot of love and a lot of good things in that relationship, but the whole picture doesn't come together, and you are forever going to be going in different directions inside of you with a lot of conflict, disappointment, non-connection, and something very important to you. So my hat's off to you, first of all, if you made a decision that in spite of the love that was there, it did not fit the complete picture. And there are other things that sometimes we give up because they're not real direction setters, and who cares, if they like a different kind of music than you, unless I guess you're both symphony artists or something. Those aren't direction setters, but you made a good decision, it sounds like. But here's what I was smiling at. 2 weeks, I just had knee replacement surgery. And I thought, yeah, I'll be up and walking around. And they laughed. I remember my surgeon laughed at me when I told him, I said, yeah, I had bone surgery once. I had surgery on my wrist. And he started laughing at me. He said, sorry, pal, this is going to be a lot harder than that. Look, if you really love somebody, I would hope you're staying with some of your friends and move into their house for a month or so, because you got some crying to do and some hurting to do and some unplugging internally to do and some hating to do and thinking of him. Don't sit around thinking of him with other women. Sit around thinking of you with your next boyfriend that's going to be what he wasn't. So let me give you a tip on grieving him. Okay? You must grieve him. Back to internal world, external reality. You must grieve him, the real him, not what you're currently grieving, which is your picture of all the wonderful things about him that you're going to miss. And this is where people get stuck in complicated bereavement, is what we call it, is they're grieving an idealized picture. They're just missing all the wonderful things. And how can I give that up? And I'll never experience that with him again, or that smile, or that intelligence, or whatever it is. And they're looking at that and they're grieving a picture of him that's not him. This is who you truly want to grieve. The person you truly want to grieve is the whole picture of him, back to our original topic today, is somebody that you enjoyed great moments with and had very much dissatisfaction with in other areas because you weren't going the same direction in life. So you got to really make sure that you're pining over the real him, which was disappointing enough to go in a different direction. And then you'll be able to tolerate the sad things because it'll fit into the future that you want to have. Okay? So, and I'm not laughing at your pain. I'm laughing at the thinking that 2 weeks is going to take care of it, because it's not. I mean, this is going to be depending on how long you were together. I wish it were, but this is going to be a period of at least months. But you need a lot of friends around you, and you need a big God to throw your heart into, who knows your future. I love this phrase. I don't know my future, but I know the one that holds my future. And if you put this into God's hands, my belief is that he will guide you where you need to end up. Okay, let's go back to the phones here. This is a tough one. Laura calling us from YouTube, lives in the great state of Utah. Has got a problem. Oh, Laura, you just lost your mother a year ago?
I lost my mother last May, and I was very, very, very close to my mom all my life.
That's so sad.
I'm 62 years old, so she was a great lady. But growing up, I had a sister who's 4 years older, who was very strong-willed and always had to have her own way. So my mom would always be like, okay, now can you give in to your sister for this? Or I was always giving in to my sister. Even if somebody gave us a gift
Wait a minute.
and
Hold on
say
a
the
second.
gift,
Hold on. You're just make sure because I couldn't quite hear you. Your mom would always want you to give in to your strong little sister.
yes, yes,
Why?
my entire life.
Why she do that?
Well, because my sister was just so hard to deal with, and my mom was just kind of so laid back. Oh, it's not a big deal if it doesn't matter in 100 years. That's her philosophy.
Well,
So,
actually,
and
it
I
is
was
a
kind
big
of the
deal. It's
same
going
way.
to last for longer than 100 years if your sister doesn't grow up and if she has kids, because then we're talking about generations of a bad pattern, but that's another topic. So what's your question then? You have a
Yeah.
difficult
Well, so what happened? So, so what happened was when my mom got on hospice, my sister took care of her for a couple months, but then she stopped. She couldn't take care of my mom after my mom stopped walking. And I work for a home care. So I said to my sister, call me, and I said, okay, now it's time for mama has to go into a bed. So my sister said, okay, I can't do that. So I took care of my mom. I had my mom, but in the meantime, when my sister had my mom, there were times family members would want to see my mom, and since my mom was my sister was her caregiver, my sister would stop people from seeing my mom, which one of my nieces got very upset about, and she decided to call the state of Utah and say that my sister was um, abusing my mother.
Yeah.
So
And
my niece never told me she
when the
was.
state showed up out there with their microscope, what did they decide?
Oh, they realized it was a lie. Because they called me to verify the story, and I said, no, 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 that's not what's going on.
Okay.
It's just a family thing. But they go, we have to go there anyway. I begged her not to go over there because it was going to start trouble, which it did. So my sister blamed me. Even though I told them, look, no, I did not call. The state called me to verify the story, and I told them it was a lie. Well, okay, so months later now, my sister is still she's angry with me and stopped talking to me and it blames me for all this. And I said, before I was always trying to make smooth things over because of my mom, who I forgot to tell the guy that I talked to, but I had a bad dream the other day, a couple weeks ago, about my mom, and she told me in the dream, don't say anything. So I'm like, oh my gosh, now what? And anyway,
Your
so
mom's still talking to you in your head as you sleep from.
well, in my dream, I don't believe that. I believe my mom is sound asleep in her soul, but I dreamt this because I've been so upset about it
Right.
that she's telling me not to say something, and I woke up in the middle of the night going, "Oh my gosh." I know, and I believe my mom's soul is with God, and she's sound asleep, doesn't know all this crap is going on. But I'm trying to be, no, I'm not going to. My daughter gave me your boundaries book. In fact, I got 4 of your books now. And
Okay.
and so I'm trying to
So
be like, no, I'm not going to
uh,
give in to this. She owes me an apology.
what's your question?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So I'm right? I know my sister's grieving for my mom. We're all grieving still, but because she is angry with me over all this, we all found out the truth that it wasn't me that called. What happened is
But
my sister went off on me a couple weeks
you've already
ago
you've already
because
told her
mhm,
you've already told her it wasn't you that called, and you told her what you told them when they called, right?
right, yeah,
Okay. So what's the question?
I did. I told them, and they know the truth because her own daughter was able to get the state's paperwork because she
Okay.
has a friend
I
who's
need
a
to get to
lawyer.
I need to get to a question. She knows factually.
Yeah.
She's had paperwork to prove it. You've told her, so she knows the facts. Now, what's the
Right.
question?
So, well, should I call her anyway because of my mom and be like, look, I'm sorry, this all happened. I told the state you didn't do this and you were exonerated. So can't we let's just be together so we could grieve because I love my sister, but
Yeah.
I just feel
They
like
look.
now it's time for her to call me instead of me calling her. Now
No,
I'm trying
sorry. A lot of people feel that way. That's not reality, for a lot of reasons, psychological reasons. But, you know, some of my favorite verses put us in, I always call it the sandwich, because what the scriptures say is exactly what a good psychologist would say. They say, look, if we've got a break in a significant relationship, you know, the Bible says if your sister, right, if your sister does something bad to you, which she has, right, then it says go to them. Okay. If they do something to you, go to them and try to talk it out. On the other side of the sandwich, it says if somebody is mad at you for something you've done or they think you've done, if they have aught against you, right, go to them. So look, the highest value is for us to always try to be redemptive, whether we're mad at somebody or somebody else is mad at us, and to try to work it out. Now, look, you've laid the groundwork for that. So what you just said would be a great note to send her, and I'm going to reiterate it to you, but I'm going to change one word. You started it out by saying, should I tell her or write her and say, look, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. No, I wouldn't say I'm sorry. I would say, I'm really sad that this misunderstanding has occurred. To the best of my awareness, you have the paperwork to know that I didn't call them, and also that I tried to clear your name. I don't know what else to do for you to understand that I didn't do this to you, but I want you to understand because I love you, and I would like for us to be friends for a long time. That'd be a great thing. And then she can respond.
Okay.
And then if she continues to go down that path, then you let her go down that path. And every 6 months or so, you ping her and say, miss you, hope we can get together sometime and resolve this or whatever. But you let her go. But you've done your part. Okay?
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I
You're
love it.
very,
Thank
very
you.
welcome. And I appreciate your care, not only for your mother, but for your sister. Um,
Thanks.
it's kind of it's kind of a common thing we hear, and people will say, well, it's not my responsibility to call them because they're the ones that did it, they should call me. Well, yeah, probably. I don't even know. I started to say maybe it's really interesting, the Bible, and I think all of we know about relationships would agree. There's really two ways to operate in the universe. There's the law. We do everything legally with attorneys and contracts and penalties and punishments and crimes and felonies and misdemeanors and take everything to court. The law is one way, as the Bible says, love is the other. So, if you listen to Jesus, he was always contrasting. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, see, he gave another system of love, which was higher than the law. And what the law would say is if somebody punches you, you punch them back. That's what every kid comes into life in the backyard rules and operates by. Well, if you did it to me, then I'm going to do it to you. I'm going to cut you out of my life. You got to come to me. And there's this system of justice. Yeah, you might be right, but that's not going to resolve anything or take anything to a higher level. What the law actually does is it reduces us to the level of dysfunction that we are in with. So we're fine until you slight me, then I'm going to return evil for evil and slight you back. Now we're even. You've heard that phrase. Now we're going to be even. Don't ever be even. What you want to do is always give back better than you were given, because that's the only way to pull somebody up to a higher level. That's why the scripture says, don't return evil for evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, let me give you a paraphrase of that. Don't let somebody else's dysfunction or immaturity pull you down to being dysfunctional back. Sure, that's fair and that's just, but overcome their dysfunction with health. Now, when you do that, are you guaranteed they're going to climb Jacob's ladder to get up there with you? No, you're not guaranteed that. But you wrote her a letter and invited her to a higher level. And that's the best we can do in a relationship. And another one of my favorite verses, Paul says, in as much as it depends on you, be at peace with everybody. So in this example, she could say, well, I'm not going to call her. She owes me an apology. Well, you can't control that, but in as much as it depends on you, seek peace with everyone. In fact, I go through many scriptures that say, and you might suffer in that you might lose, but you've lived to a higher standard. And you know what? That's how bad stuff gets turned around all the time. Okay, we got time for one quick one from the social world. Jess, what do we got?
All right. I have anxiety and I just need to know how to relax.
Jessica, don't talk to me about you. Give me
No, this is a question. I mean,
all right, I'm just
my
playing.
question. All right. I have good stuff going on in my life too, but goodness, it's hard to breathe in the midst of everything. So
Say it again. Goodness.
So,
you don't. Go ahead. What does the question say?
yeah. I have anxiety and how do I relax? I have good stuff going on in my life too, but goodness, it's hard to breathe in the midst of everything.
Read it one more time.
Let's see. I have anxiety and how do you relax? I have good stuff going on in my life too. It's hard to breathe in the midst of everything.
Okay, I don't know what in the midst of everything is. Couple of quick diagnostic issues. One of the things that you can do, and this is easily findable on the web, Google a topic called self-care or self-treatment for anxiety or whatever. And there's a number of things that you can do, practically speaking, that will help you breathe in the midst of things. There's mindfulness, and there's exercise, and there's relaxation techniques, and there's a bunch of stuff that's primarily stuff we ought to be doing anyway, but it really can help you. But that's not going to fix the underlying problem. Now, here's something I want you to think about in your question. The way that you posed it was, I have a bunch of good stuff going on, but then you got into whatever the unsaid midst of things was about, which is the negative stuff. I guess it's overwhelming me and I can't connect to the good stuff. Now, I would be just as worried about you if you said, I am so happy because everything in my life is going so great. That still tells me that your sense of security and well-being is very, very, very dependent on good stuff happening. But right now, some bad stuff is happening and it's spoiling the good stuff. So I would want you to get with somebody really, really good who understands anxiety and who can begin to see what's going on inside of you where something negative can overwhelm the system to where you can't connect with the positive stuff as well. Because, there's a whole field of science called resilience. And resilience has to do with our being able to thrive and be okay, at least, or even better, even in the midst of conflicts going around us and this, there's a number of things that go into this. I'm going to suggest to you, you didn't call, so I can't give it to you, but if you go to boundaries.me and look up the workshops, then there's one on anxiety, outsmarting your anxiety or something. Jess, what's the title of that?
It is Outsmart Your Anxiety, and it's at www.boundaries.me/anxiety for all the information on it.
There you go. That will help you understand. Look, there's a lot of stuff. It's kind of like part of the equipment that sits in you of how you, whatever's going on around you, it's either how to manage those problematic situations better. Maybe the relationships are causing some of this, Or what you've got is you've got an overactive anxiety system that lives in you when certain things happen that triggers that. And then all those buttons go off and your brain fires all sorts of stuff. And so you're so anxious from, your body is basically telling your head that life's not good when it really is good, but your brain can't appreciate it because you're getting triggered. So there may be some unresolved kind of trauma going on, as well as what we talked about in the beginning of the program, that there's some strengths that you have that never been integrated into all of that. So I give you the simple stuff, like I said, the self-care, you can focus on the positive, this and the other, but a couple of things, whatever's going on in the midst of these other scenarios, I would like to see you have a project of increasing what we call self-efficacy and getting with somebody that can coach you to step into these relationships that are causing problems, like maybe setting better boundaries, maybe having different expectations, maybe letting go of some very dysfunctional people that are I don't know what's causing it, but you've got to deal with the current external reality by changing your abilities and skills to deal with them, as well as whatever is getting triggered inside of you that may not be resolved from the past. But the big thing is the equipment that lives inside of you, of how you take maybe criticism, or what conflict feels like to you, or how big is your other support system around you that would ground you when this other bad stuff is happening. That's another big part of this. Okay, guys, do we have the best audience in the world or what? I mean, listen to this army of growing people, and they're just in the process of they're all like Catherine, callers of the day, because they're dealing with it. That's what we do in this program every single day. You can find us on all the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or also download the program on wherever you get your podcast, but as the podcast. And it's been fun. And with that, don't forget, webinar coming up next week. Go sign up for it right now. Go to boundaries.me/trust. It's a 2-hour webinar on all the dynamics of trust, and when trust is broken, how to repair it, or should you repair it, or should you trust that person at all? And if you're going to trust them, what do you need to see first? All of that, boundaries.me/trust. And while you're there, check out the whole boundaries.me world, because I think there's something in there good for you. Okay, guys, see you next time. Bye.